So far in this section, we've learned several ways to come up with great topics for your content. Another way is to ask your audience themselves. So if you already have an audience, this is going to be a lot easier. This audience could be anywhere from an email list to following you on social media, your YouTube subscribers, wherever they are, it doesn't really matter. But I want to give you some tips and tools for actually how to ask your audience for ideas. So some tools that you can use are just any sort of survey tool like Google Forms, Typeform, SurveyMonkey, or on social media, you can often do polls. I know on Facebook and Twitter, you can create polls right within the platform itself. So if it's kind of determining between a couple different ideas, you can create a poll. Or like I did recently in my Photography and Friends Facebook group, I mentioned we have those weekly photo adventures. Every Monday we post an idea for an inspirational way to take photos to try to get people to go out and take photos. We were running out of ideas for them, so I just made a post that said, hey, what ideas do you have for our weekly photo adventures? And I got several dozens of ideas that we can use now, and now I have another year's worth of photo adventures to post each week. So lots of different ways to ask your audience, but these are the tools that I like using. Some tips for your surveys: just keep it short. If the survey is too long, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get people to take action. Usually if I have a survey for my audience, I'll keep it sometimes to just 1 or 2 questions. And I'll say that in my email that I send or on the social media posts. I'll say something like, help me by answering this 1 question survey, just to let people know it's going to be short. Having open-ended questions, while that's going to be a little bit longer for people to do, it's better because you'll get higher quality content. Sometimes asking yes or no questions or multiple choice questions is great, but to get really great ideas, you can ask open-ended questions. When you are doing a survey, make sure you have it set up so it's like 1 question at a time. This is more so if you're posting on social media. It's probably better to ask 1 question in a post rather than a bunch of questions. If you're doing something more like a Google Form or SurveyMonkey or something like that, it's okay to ask multiple questions on that survey. So you want to avoid those types of leading questions. You want to be more specific. So for example, if it is about buying a home, maybe you ask a question like, what was the hardest thing about getting a mortgage? Or what was the hardest thing about the home buying process for you? Or what would make buying a home easier for you? Those kinds of more open-ended questions. And then giving incentives is a great way to get more answers. So giving away a gift card, giving away some sort of freebie, free download, another piece of content, a podcast, a video series, something like that in exchange for people answering your questions. That'll help you get more people responding, especially if your audience isn't that big. So if you're just starting, here's a few questions that I would ask. What's the biggest challenge doing X, Y, or Z, whatever it is your content is about or your business is about? You can ask, what service or tool would help you doing that? What experience do you have in this? So this is a good question to ask so that you know if people are complete beginners, if they're more intermediate, more advanced. You can even do more of a poll or a multiple choice. Say something like, what experience are you? Beginner, intermediate, advanced. So you know if you're creating content to more beginners or advanced. What's your preferred method of learning? This is another way, not specifically for coming up with ideas for your content, but for content formats. So I would just leave this as open-ended, or you could do a poll for, podcast, video, article, book. You could list out different content formats that you want to create and see which ones your audience like most, and then use that when you start creating your content. So if you haven't done a survey for your audience, I would definitely recommend doing that right now and see what they say. Come up with a list of questions, just a few or 1 question, and see what happens. And I would love to know what happens. So once you do it, make sure that you reach out to me, find me on social media, and share your insights in the course, in the Q&A section of the course, or anywhere. I would be really interested to see what you come up with. All right, so hopefully this section on coming up with ideas for your content has been very beneficial. And if you haven't been doing so throughout the section, now is the time to sit down and do it. I challenge you to come up with at least 50 ideas for content. And so that way you have almost a year's worth of content that you can create. And that should cover the basis for pretty much any brand or business. And yeah, so do that, and we'll see you in the next section.